What's up, y'all? This is Jake, and today I wanted to share some important tips on how to clean up your raw audio files in Logic Pro, export your stems the right way, and make sure they're 100% ready for the mixing process. So you've come to the point in your music making process where everything is completely tracked in your project, and now it's time to mix. So whether you are going to be doing the mixing yourself, or if you're sending it off to someone else to mix, there are certain things you need to do in order to properly prepare your individual audio files or stems for the mixdown process. Now, some things I've noticed over the years when artists send me their stems for me to mix are things like mislabeled or confusing track names, audio files that don't line up properly because they don't have the same start point, tracks that are either way too loud or way too quiet, tracks that have excessive amounts of clicks, pops, or noise, tracks that aren't phase corrected, things like that. Now, if your stems do have any of these issues, it's not the end of the world. A lot of these problems can be fixed before the mixdown process, but you really do want to avoid as many issues as possible before you send them off so that more time can be spent actually mixing the song instead of fixing all the technical problems. And it's especially important if you're paying a whole lot of money to get your songs mixed, because if you're creating a whole lot of extra work for the engineer to fix certain problems, it's really just going to cost you more in the end. So basically, the point is to get your tracks as clean and organized as humanly possible so that all it takes to start mixing is to drag your stems over to an empty project file, and boom, everything is labeled, lined up, and ready to go. So let's go ahead and jump over to Logic Pro, where I can show you how to get your stems completely organized and ready for mixing. Alright, so we have Logic open here. This is a project I'll be using just to show you what I mean. So first things first, we're going to create a new version of the project by going to File, Project Alternatives, choose a new alternative, because we're going to be doing a lot of changes that you don't want to necessarily affect your original project. So let's call this whatever your title of your project is. We'll just go ahead and call it Pre-Mix Stem Prep, something like that. Click OK. All right, so what we're going to do first is actually go to the mixer window and look at everything we have, all the plugins. Looks okay. So however your mix is right now, before you start prepping all the stems, will be your reference mix, and we'll go ahead and bounce that right now. So first things first, set the cycle range right here, or you can toggle it using C, to be however long your song is. So the start point will obviously be where the song starts, which is right here. And where the song ends, we'll kind of have it right here because the song fades out. Give it just a little bit more time to hang on. All right, so we're going to set it there. And you can either click Command B for bounce, or go to the mixer window, go over to the far right, and where it says stereo out, this is your stereo out mix. So you'll click the bounce button, and it takes you to this window. And as you can see, the cycle we set up actually is reflected right here. So the Logic already knows where to export the start and end. So it knows how long your mix is going to be. And what we're going to do is go ahead and bounce a wave file, which is an uncompressed version of the song, as well as an MP3, just in case we need it. For this one, for the wave, we can do wave 24-bit. Sample rate is fine as long as it matches your project. And we'll want to do offline so that you don't have to listen to the whole song while it's bouncing. And make sure you click normalize off. Same thing for MP3. It copies the settings over. 320 looks good. And we'll go ahead and call this whatever your song name is. Reference mix. probably a better way to kind of condense that. We'll call it ref mix. And what I like to do is put the BPM in the title, which kind of helps sometimes. We'll do 120 because it's 120 BPM. And we'll go ahead and click OK. OK. Save it. Let's see, you might have to click the name again. Ref mix 120. Go ahead and bounce that. Alright, so now that we have a reference mix bounce, before we start changing things, now we can actually start to prepare all your stems. So what I like to do is go ahead and hold down the Option key and click every fader. What that's going to do is bring it to 0 for every fader so that we can sort of reset the mixing console so that everything is at 0. Next, we'll want to make sure all the panning is set at 0. Looks like everything already is. And then we're going to want to turn off the sends. Right now, these are sending to buses that have like a room reverb delay. So we're just gonna turn those off. And next, we're going to want to turn off all the plugins on every track. Some people might decide they have a plugin on a specific track that is super crucial to their sound. If you have, like, for instance, saturation on a track, on this bass track, I have a bunch of things going on. I've got like a chorus effect, slight EQ, got a decapitator by Sound Toys to give it some more saturation. So if you take it off, you kind of notice that things are missing. So for this track, I might just want to take off the EQs and leave the processing I have, because the chorus is really important for the sound. So if you run into any questions of like, well, should I keep this plugin? Should I turn it off? Just go with your instinct. If you like the sound, you like the sound. You don't trust somebody to be messing it up or changing it later. Just go with what feels right. All right, so once you've kind of made the decisions on which plugins to turn off and which ones to keep, you see I've turned off most of mine. Turn off all the sends to effects. So now we're going to look at the individual files themselves and see how loud they are hitting right now. So obviously when I play it, everything is super loud because some of them are hitting a little too loud. Some of them are hitting a little too soft. So what we're going to do is go track by track and look at where we're peaking in terms of decibels. And next what we're going to do is go up to the top, the toolbar, click this to look at more options if your screen is a little small like mine is, and click pre-fader metering. So what this is going to tell us, and you notice it kind of switches over here, flips from side to side. And what this is going to tell us is how loud the audio files are before any fader adjustments. So if we go ahead and play this, we have the vocal soloed. By the way, these are just test vocals. They don't have any lyrics in them. Only I can make fun of my singing. So right now it's hitting at about, if we go to the what looks like the loudest point in the song, it's hitting about negative 14.9. So that's okay. Usually I'll want, just to be consistent, I like everything peaking at negative 12 dB. And the reason for that is when you send it over, it's not too loud, it's not too soft. Usually negative 12 is a good place for the audio file to hit any sort of plugin, like a compressor, where it's not overloading it, but it's not too low that it's not making any changes right away either. So if we go up here, click this little option, and select whatever audio files we have. We're going to select both audio files for this vocal channel. Go over to gain, and since it's negative 14.9, we're going to do a little math in our heads. Raise that up by 2.9 dB, so that we're hitting more towards negative 12 dB. It's new, I feel I see it again. So now it's hitting negative 12.1. That's good enough for us. Next, we're going to go to the second one, do the same thing. Man, these vocals sound great. I hope you're enjoying them as much as I am. And we're going to want to do the same thing, bring that up to plus 0.5. This is great, isn't it? So negative 12, that's fine. We'll raise it up 0.3. Look out the window, what do I see? Okay. Next, we're going to look at a software instrument. And as you can see, this one is right out the gate with without any fader adjustments, super loud. So we're actually going to be looking inside the virtual instrument, which in this case is the Logic sampler. And let's see, the volume we're kind of hitting is around, let's see if it gets any louder, negative 4.2. So that's kind of loud. So if we look at the output volume in the software instrument or whatever virtual instrument you might be using, you see it's at negative 4. So if we're at negative 4 on here, we will need to reduce it by 8 decibels so that it hits negative 12 pre-fadering. So let's go ahead and bring it down to negative 12. And there we go. It's hitting at negative 12. Ooh, that one is kind of loud. Hitting at negative 10. Let's go ahead and drop that by 2 dBs. All right, it's sort of hitting negative 12 as well. And basically you want to continue doing this for every track you have so that negative 12 right across the board is super consistent. All right, so now that we have all our gains adjusted for all the audio files, let's see, we looked at the software instrument output volume. Everything looks good. If we get that little test. So I made some adjustments for every percussion element with my sampler. So if you make little volume adjustments here and there, you'll make sure that every drum hit is hitting at negative 12. And it doesn't always have to be exactly negative 12. It's you can do negative 15. Whatever is a consistent place to look at in terms of decibels that will not peak too loud or too quietly. Whatever works for you, negative 12 works for me. All right, so now that we have all our volumes figured out, we'll do a last minute look at some of the audio files themselves. Usually to avoid any clicks or pops whenever audio files come in, I like to add fades at the beginning and end of every audio file. So what we're going to look at is the secondary tool. You have the first tool, that's your regular one, your pointer tool. For our secondary tool, we're going to go down to Fade Tool in this little window right here. Now, when we hover over the start of any audio file, as a matter of fact, let's go ahead and chop any thing we don't need. You can also do the function strip silence, which will automatically get rid of any silence you have in your audio files, which will also prevent any noise that might happen in between takes. So for example, this is a vocal take, so I'm just kind of removing the stuff that we don't really need. And I have a hotkey that I made just for chopping things up. Right now I have Apple T, which is a split function. You can also find it up here, split by playhead, which does the same thing. So if you find a hotkey that works for you, just go for it. All right, next, to apply the fade tool to our audio files, we already selected the fade tool. So now we'll hover around the start of the audio files you want to select. Hold down the command key, click, and drag to create a nice little fade. And you can adjust this as you need to. Make sure we're selecting everything. This way, when the audio file comes in, there's no abrupt clicking noises or popping. So it's nice and clean when it comes in. We'll do the same for the ends. And you want to go ahead and make sure you're not affecting things you don't want to affect on the other audio files. All right, and you'll basically do the same to all of your audio files in the track. Software instruments, obviously you don't have to worry about this because it's all MIDI. All right, so all your audio files and tracks are all cleaned up here. They're all labeled properly. So next we're going to look at bouncing the stems. And what you'll want to do, we'll set up that cycle again because we took it out last time. That looks about right for the end point. Start point looks okay. And a nice trick, instead of soloing every track, clicking bounce, which you can do if you're a perfectionist and you want to have quality control over every track when you're bouncing them. A nice thing that Logic has is if you go to File, Export, and All Tracks as Audio Files, you'll actually bounce all the stems at once. So if we make a new folder in the bounces, we'll call it Russian Ocean Stems. Create. And now you'll choose how you want to bounce it. As before, we'll do the WAV files, export cycle range only because we're doing this cycle range as we selected. Bit depth, we'll go ahead and do 24 bits, kind of the standard for audio files. And this one is important because I actually do have a multi-output software instrument, which is doing the drums in this track. So we're going to select one file per channel strip. And what that means is I have these channel strips, so it's going to do a single file for every drum sound. I'll have a file for the kick, audio file for snare, clap, hi-hat. This is very important to turn normalize off. If you do any of these other ones, it will bring up the volume automatically in every track so that it hits 0. And we're not talking about unity, we're talking about just under clipping. And we don't want that because we want to keep our -12, what we work so hard to adjust for every track. So normalize, just do off so it won't automatically add gain to every track we have. Next, for pattern, this will be how you name your tracks, and it shows you an example. So I usually like to do the project name, track name, and I'll do one of these. One of these guys. Boop. Looks nice, doesn't it? All right, so we're ready to bounce. So let's click export. All right, so once your files are done exporting, going to want to go up here, right click on the title of your project. This little drop down menu will bring you to your project folder. So that pops up, go to bounces, stems. This is the folder we made earlier. And there you go. All your stems are printed and ready to be mixed. All right, so next time you're getting a track ready for mixing and your files are unorganized and all over the place in your project, if you follow these steps, I promise you whoever is mixing your project, whether it's you or someone else, will be very happy. And it doesn't really matter what program you use. Just because I use Logic Pro doesn't mean these steps won't work the same way for things like Ableton, Pro Tools, Cubase, Reason. It's all pretty much the same fundamentals. So if you like what you just saw, please click like, subscribe to my channel, and stay tuned for more production tips on Jake Thompson Audio.